Are we now recording?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Can I just tack on the back of this session that Chris and Sarge, I note that you guys won't necessarily be the doers. This session and inviting you guys along was more about you guys having an awareness and also contributing to some of the things that we need to flesh out now along the way. So you guys having some background knowledge about the system, and you might be able to assist us in resolving some of the things that we need to resolve moving forward as a team. So if you're wondering why you were here and that you won't be doing the data entry, that's why. Okay, so I just wanted to premise that. Aware of that.
Sorry, the purpose of this training session originally started out as more show and tell of exactly how we're going to enter data into IPP. It has morphed into a session of more about a little bit higher level and also a workshop to workshop some of the details around how we set up projects and our business rules for how we put the data into IPP and manage it. And it certainly is off the back of a very detailed training needs analysis where we really went to the depths to understand what type of training is needed for different elements in the process. It was identified very early on that asset governance play a pretty key role in the IDF at each of the gate decisions, and certainly have a role in terms of ownership over the data as well that sits in there. So hence why I guess the session will also delve into around the roles and responsibilities so everyone's clear. So the agenda just off the back of that is asset governance role and responsibility, mechanics of the gates, and some of this you will have seen already in the end user training, but just a different view of it. Changes to how we use IPP, and we'll go and have a look at the test environment of what it's looking like. Procedure for gate decisions, the project setup business rules that we've got a draft of, and what's next. So very much the whole way it's been an 80-20 rule of let's get this right for 80% of the time, and the other 20 we're just going to have to work through. And you know, this is IDF certainly has a lot of elements to it and stretches right across the business. So if you are finding something that isn't working, please speak up so that we can try and address it to get it working. The option to just opt out and not use it isn't one that we have to it. This is the framework we work in, and we need to improve it as we go to make it work for us. So the asset governance role in IDF, and this is pulled pretty much directly from either the corporate standard or the IDF business manual. And we'll just talk through each one of these. And as Tanya said, it may not necessarily be all of you. It may be specific people in the team, but as a collective team, and certainly Tanya as manager has these accountabilities. So the first one is accountable for the IPP data. So there were three elements that we really looked at here is who's accountable for, I guess, the framework and the tools and templates and it working, who's accountable for the actual software, and then who's accountable for the data in the software. And where it's landed is the actual data that sits in IPP, the accountability sits with asset governance. And that's probably not a new thing, but that's been the case for a while. Yeah. We've just clearly stated it now. The next one is inputting data into IPP, and I've got initially there because we have got two phases of this rollout. The initial phase is going to still be that manual data entry for the next couple of months till we move to where proponents and project managers are entering the data directly. So to start with, that manual entry will be contained to the asset governance team. The next one is about the QA of the IPP data, and that becomes critical when we've got people directly entering data, and making sure we set up in those processes the workflow processes for the approvals at gates, that ability for asset governance to do those QAs. What that looks like and how that works is something that I'm not sure of at the moment, and there's got to be further conversations around, is that when a project manager submits something, or a proponent, submits a business case, it first goes to an asset governance officer, then goes to the sponsor. That's an example. Or is it every now and again you just do a spot check of random ones, or it could look very differently. And that happens, that QA check happens when you manually input the data, like with what Beth does. She's often checking to make sure the data makes sense and right. The next one is alignment of IDF to the asset management system, and that's more around making sure something. What do I write that for? A lot of it is, I guess we have assets that are generated, or new upgrade and renewal assets that are generated out of the asset management system. So our asset lifecycle strategies and that sort of stuff. So the work that Niels and my team do. So it's making sure we're really clear of those outputs from the asset management system and how they then roll through IDF, and that is seamlessly happening. And obviously that's in conjunction with Brooke Saunders as the owner of IDF as such, so the governance team who controls the IDF. And that's all about like the system and the framework, as opposed to being responsible for the actual investments and doing those plans as such, if that's clear. Clear as mud with my definitions. And the last one is champion the IDF within SAP. And I put this tile pretty much on everyone. I've done this type of session for a couple of key teams, and I think it's the role of all of us, where we've got a really integral part, is to be that champion. And you may have heard me say it, my view is that everyone in the business should be a champion of IDF, because we'll eventually get to a place where it's just how we do stuff here. And so we should all be able to do it and understand it and know how we make investment decisions in this business. But obviously it's a transition, and that's not going to happen overnight. Any questions on that? Feel free to stop me at any stage if it doesn't make sense. It's the documentation, the whole structure. All the documents all make up. I can show you, when we finish this, I'll pop up a slide that I've just used for did a session this morning about the maintenance management framework and how it integrates with IDF, and I've got a really cool slide that kind of shows that. I might pull that up at the end. Yeah. A system is like a framework, I guess, that has different levels of policy and governance and tools and templates and software is not just the tool. Any other questions? Let's roll. Mechanics of the gate. So this is no different from what got showed in the end user training. So from go live, the forms and checklists at the phases and gates will be paper-based, very similar, I guess, process or procedure to what we've been doing with the bids, where they will fill them out, they will get their sponsors' approval on them, and then we're going to save it into a location for the asset governance team then to update IPP. So very much the same, and there's a procedure that I just reviewed this morning, and we'll go and have a look at it of what it's looking like. But effectively the same as that bid process that we used to use. The IOC meetings and agenda will be facilitated by the governance team. So in gates 1, 2 and 6, they'll be involved. And so from the start, it'll just be a series of email notifications, basically. So not ideal by any stretch, but will hopefully by late August, what it then changes to, and the Tech One consultant started today building it actually. So he scoped it 2 weeks ago and he's actually started doing it today. So the forms, so the investment opportunity brief and business case templates, they will exist. So from late August, or even from now actually, but from late August, they will be fields that sit in IPP. The whole form will be fields in IPP. And as a proponent, I will log on to Tech One and I will just direct enter my information into those fields. So there's no electronic form or paper-based form. Obviously, you can still use those paper-based if you want to fill it out and then just copy and paste in, because that's how you like to work. But the proponent will be required to direct enter in. From then on, the gate approvals at each gate will be workflows where it'll then go through a series of, you know, go to sponsor, go to here, go to there, for that review, and the review will be in Tech One. So as a sponsor, I'll have to go to Tech One to review the information and click a button to say if I approve or not, basically. It's not an automated workflow. IPP is not that smart, but it's what they're calling semi-automated, and it takes away the emails. You'll still get emails for notifications, but it'll all happen in there. There will still be manual updates of IPP by the asset governance team for change requests. So specifically, once you get past gate 2, if there's a change to a project within the phase, then that change will get signed off by the sponsor in a paper-based form, and then that will go to asset governance to then update the IPP, the business case. IOC meetings and the agenda will still be facilitated by the governance team, and that's really one of those areas where we're writing the procedure with them, but until we start outworking it, knowing really what that looks and feels like and what works. So there is a little bit of wait and see with some of this stuff, and being a little bit agile on it. So the key message in all of that, oh, here it's here. The intent is, and the biggest change to how we use IPP is that business cases will exist as fields in IPP, not as attachments. So, and the business case replaces what we used to call a bid document, basically. They have very similar fields. And so rather than having, I guess one of the problems when we started this project is we got all this rich data in the bid document, but you could only pull it out on an individual project basis. You couldn't actually pull it out on a, you know, a selection of projects. And often we were reworking, I don't know how many times Caitlin and Kathy had to sit down and go through bid documents because someone decided they wanted a field out of the attachment. So the idea is that we have all this data, let's make it accessible if we've gone to the effort to actually create it in the first place. So yeah, the business cases will exist as fields in the IPP, and that will be from straight away. The flip side to that, I guess, is when asset governance is updating the IPP, there is more fields that will need to be updated, and there is a workload to that we're working through as well, and very, very conscious of. So if I show you, so this is just in the test environment. So this is not live yet. I'm just going to find a project that might have data in it. One I found the other day. Yeah, it has some data in it. So it's gonna, this is all the same look and feel. There's nothing too different here. The tabs of information are the same. There is one or two new tabs in here, and some of the fields have changed. So, you know, we've moved some fields around, but we've been very conscious where we've got existing data, we don't lose it. So we've mapped it to either, well, a lot of the fields also exist in the business case that were in the bid. So,
is it intended that for mandatory fields, because can I assume that those are the ones with the asterisks next to them?
yes.
That if when you go to say you're entering a new project and you go to hit save, that the system will error on you and tell you that you haven't completed the mandatory field. Wonderful.
Yep. We just got to be really conscious. The flip side to that is arming these proponents with the information to be able to fill that out then.
Yep.
Because when we go to the workflow, they won't be able to go to anyone, like they won't be able to send it off. So making sure that A, they've got the right information to fill it out, and B, they just don't whack any old thing in there because they've got to put something.
Yeah, because we don't want.
Yeah, yeah. So there is a balance there. There aren't a lot that are mandatory. There's some mandatory ones around what you need for the QTC model. I haven't as yet asked for any others to be mandatory. My, I guess, thinking behind that, and I don't know if this is right thinking, is that we start to, I guess, dictate too much and lose the flexibility as well. So we do have very different projects across the board. But I mean, maybe it's okay because what we're saying is these fields are the minimum we want you to fill in. So there is a bit of a catch-22 here. So it's probably something we'll just monitor and see. If we're finding people not filling out fields often, then maybe it's something we've got to change. So in here, like you'll see, there's a lot of the same fields that were always in there. Where they're new, so the risk and rating ones, what we've brought in, I guess, is capturing the inherent risk of doing nothing, and then also the residual risk if we do the project that, or the solution that comes out of the business case. We're capturing it in Beacon, so Beacon will be the place that you actually go and enter the risk, and this is just a summary we're capturing in here. We're looking at phasing out these top fields here, and we may even just hide them. However, I'm just conscious there's a whole lot of data in there and not wanting to hide it yet, but eventually moving to the place where Beacon is where you do your risk rating, and you just bring in a summary of that inherent risk rating over here so that we can use that data to prioritise or whatever we want to use that data for.
Yep.
Comments, attachments, the same. Financial information. So the expenditure, the change with this, so we used to always just work on this project phase, so design and construct, or it was a concept, I think, or land, environment are options there. Going forward, we're aligning it to IDF phases. So if that's concept design, then this phase would be select.
Yep.
And so again, we've left that column of data there. It won't need to be filled out for new stuff. It's this phase that becomes really important.
Have we captured that as part of the procedure? Or the
Correct.
Yep.
So there's a procedure on how to fill out the templates, and then there's a procedure on how do I submit it to get approval. So revenue's the same. Then we have these investment costings. So cost of disposal, which was a field that someone needed for QTC, I think, so we've left it there. But cost of disposal is also part of this life of project cost.
We need cost of disposal from a regulatory perspective.
So what it is.
Yep. Councillors need to be aware of what it's costing us to dispose of an asset if we're going to build something new.
Yep.
Or renew it or replace it. As an oversight governance element, because if they're approving that as part of the capitalisation, the budget process, that budget adoption process, then that's covering off on our audit due diligence. So it's not a surprise when we come to do the financial statements.
Yep, cool. So then this maintenance over the life of asset and operating cost over the life, I'm not sure the quality of data we're going to get to start with, but at least we're starting to talk about it. And then we end up with total OMM, life of the project, which is that upfront capital cost, and then a whole of life cost. So obviously this field plus this field equals whole of life. And then we've got some historical data that is entered that we didn't want to lose. So, and then there's some other fields around operational impact and funding. So tick boxes around which elements or outcomes, I guess, project might be meeting, so that we can run a report to pull out projects that are at a certain phase and meet, say, security of essential services, and all of a sudden we've got our list to start with of what we might want to put forward for funding. They can and they have been. So they're read-only. Some of them we've made a decision to hide, so they exist there. And if we ever want to go and unhide them, we can, because there's valuable data. But yeah, anything historical that we don't want to edit will be made just view only. Yeah. The last thing we want is data going in them when they shouldn't be in the wrong place. But it's a bit of a, yeah, so as you start working with this, if there's a field that you think was there, it hasn't been deleted, it's just been hidden. And if you want it back, we'll get it back. I'll keep moving. There's this other fields is basically the real core of the business case, options, recommended options, scope of the work, legislative requirements. And roles just captures who's who in the zoo in terms of all the roles that are in the IDF. And it's all same thereafter. Cool. Any questions? Any concerns? It'll be on Connected, and I'll show you. It's not yet finalised, so in the next day or two it will be, and it'll be up on the IDF Connected page. So you need to get there. So our council at the top here, an investment decision framework. And if I go, so you can either go here to tools and templates or down the side, tools and templates, and it'll sit in here. So all the checklists and forms all sit in here. You can end up navigating to the document library if you want a different look of how you like to get to things. I don't. Other questions on that? Yeah. So, enter procedures. Good segue. These are the procedures that will be available. So there's completing the investment opportunity brief, completing the business case template, and then submit how you submit those two. Look, I'm in two minds. There's 4 procedures of whether they just should be all in one or not. So we'll see how we go. If it doesn't make sense, we'll just combine them. These two potentially could be one. Then actually, I've missed the dot point here. There's actually 3 here. So these are ones that Beck created previously and you possibly have seen before. So adding IPP bids to the project ledger and then entering IPP bids into the actual IPP itself. And then the last one is checking for a project code, so to see if one already exists or not. So they're the 3 that are probably the ones that those that are entering data into IPP will be most or get most familiar with. These ones up here more talk about how I, as a proponent, what I do, what steps do I need to do to get it to you guys to do that update. And then these last 3 are how you do the update. So very quickly, I want to get to the project setup stuff and not necessarily in terms of value or time. This is just in the collab space for the project. So this is just where we're building everything and then we'll bring it into or register an ECM and then put links on it. So I've got a couple of questions for you. Let's submit the business case. Let's look at that one. And it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's fill out the form, the proponent. It's then save the file. And I guess we've got 2 options here. Do we direct people to save it in a central location like we have done in the past, i.e. ODrive in asset governance? Or do we make them save it in their own project files? And I've spoken to Brodie, we don't yet have a system where we've got a centralised place, so people would be saving these wherever, or we create a space on SharePoint where people like on connected. So I'm not sure if you guys have any, because there's this where they save it and work on it, and then there's another step further on where they save it to asset governance to then update IPP. So in the past with the bid documents, because we've just done it in one hit, we've had that tracker, Excel tracker, and so it was all saved in one location, never moved locations, and the tracker just got updated so you knew when you needed to do something with it. I'm not so keen on continuing that tracker.
No.
Well, that is very true.
All the project basically.
Yeah.
Project finishing.
Correct. Yeah.
Starting in the right spot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they don't have a project number.
They will. Well, the investment opportunity brief won't. at gate 0, they'll get, when they get gate 0 approval, they'll get a project number. Yeah. So if we run with that, if they're saving it and working out of ECM, which the issue is people don't know how to do that, and we'll have to upskill them and train them to do that, and may not be this next week's solution. But you're correct, that's where it should be.
Maybe that's the long-term solution.
To work that way. So then I guess if we were at that point, so could it save the file? There's a step here to get IOC recommendation. And that obviously goes off to, there's a procedure around that for asset governance to handle. Then it comes back for sponsor decision. Once the sponsor's decided and whatever they decide, so that's yes, approve. If it's in ECM, how does the sponsor let you know it's ready to, IPP has to be updated? This should just be a notification, here's the ECM doc set ID. Oh, as an action.
And it comes to the stat.
This,
Hey, Danielle.
hi, sorry, I'm just listening in the background here. How long, because this is only talking about those paper version until everything's live in IPP itself. So how long are we talking about this interim procedure? That's all I'm want to raise. Is this going to be like a 8-week max? A couple of months, yeah.
Yeah, so really for a couple of months, and then we'll be to direct entry.
Correct, yeah.
Do we just have them email it all to the stat mailbox and then we just put it into a folder? But then you need everyone to have access to it. The whole business has to be granted access to it.
Which you can do. So on that IDF space, there can be a front, I don't know, I'd have to ask that actually.
Yeah.
You can, because they're standalone and not business unit related. We're talking 2 months as well. Who do I need to, I'm just conscious of time wanting to go to that project setup. Who will I just liaise with you, Tanya, or someone else getting that finalised and sorted of what that looks like?
Yeah.
Is there any strong opinion of one way or another, or just tell me and I'll move on? No? That's cool. We'll just roll. Something to be surprised. People, have really strong feelings about. So they're very straightforward, and there's a little bit of detail. Like obviously it just says update IPP. Then there's those other procedures that will be what the tasks are, and Beck's created them and has to review them with the new changes we've made in terms of those new fields. So that's what it looks like. I'll just work with you on that. And yeah. Okay, so the next bit is just these business rules. Yeah, I know, it's really shit, isn't it? How's that? Bigger or
Yeah, that's better.
that's good? Righto. So the intent I got from Beck originally, a spreadsheet, I guess, of the how to be somewhere. It was this scenario. If this happens, do this. So what I've converted that into, and this is all about how we set up projects in IPP when they're first created, and how they then, obviously it then flows on and has an impact of how we then pull them into the budget packs.
Yep.
So trying to get these business rules set up so that we're not having every budget to kind of do this manipulating so that it pulls across properly. We actually get it right from the start and what is right, and it's agreed set of rules across the business or the key people. So I just want to quickly step through each one of these. This has been developed with Beck and Tanya Barnes. Yep. So we've had a crack at this to start with.
Can I also just add on to the end of that the flow-on effect of this decision is then what the project looks like when you're going to capitalise it as well. So Sarge, this is really key around close out of projects, close out of work orders, and that capitalisation process, and making it easier for us at the end of the line as well.
Yeah.
So it's got a bit of a multiple impact along the way.
Yeah, and trying to get it right from the start, or at least making it the best outcome the most, and manageable for who's left, I guess, is because I appreciate that we're not going to get one thing that suits everyone perfectly.
No.
Okay, so let's just run through these quickly. And this is other than what's next or what's coming. That's all I've got left. So the first one is one project number for the entire life of an investment. So that's pretty straightforward. There is some exceptions to that in terms of we do a business case and then we realise it's actually 3 projects, not one. So, but certainly from when we start spending CapEx money, it's one project number is the intent.
Capital funds that go on next year, what's the water method?
Yep, correct. Yep, we'll talk about them. So there's about 4 business rules to cover renewal. I think they can be reduced, but anyway, we'll talk through them as well. I don't know your stuff either. So, oh dear. Yes, go away. So where a business case identifies multiple options, then set up multiple projects after gate 2 approval. So this is that example that I've just given where we do a business case, and to solve the problems, we need to actually do 2 capital projects. So at that point, we would keep one in that current project number and then create a second one for it. So that's pretty straightforward. So we've seen that with Turkey Beach Road, where we've done a design and now we've realised we've got, we're going to do the shoulders separate to the clearing or something, whatever it might be. And they would happen as 2 different packages of work, and they're 2 different assets, or I don't know if that one's a good example. So the next one is different project numbers for different stages of a multi-stage investment. So like Gundoon Street footpath, there's 3 stages of it. We're building the first one at the moment, or the second one. What are we on? But then there's another stage, and then there's Harbour Harbour. So they need to all be separate projects. So we may know this from right at the get-go, but again, this might be one where we do the business case and we get to gate 2 approval and we go, hang on a minute, we can't fund this project in one hit. We're going to have to do it in multiple stages. So I'll set it up as multiple projects. And that way we can get into this habit of it runs the life of the IDF and then you actually close the project.
Yeah, you close the stage.
The
'Cause,
stage
yeah, when you
project.
complete the stage, because you might have a delay in the next stage starting,
Yeah.
and then you haven't been able to capitalise and close out, even though the asset's ready and ready for use.
And it creates confusion at the planning end as well of, oh, but I thought we built that. Oh no, that now has
Right.
yeah.
So that makes sense.
The next one is one project number for each new upgrade item from asset growth plans. This is particularly the pain point one we've been dealing with is the pedestrian cycleway strategy, where it's one number and then it gets confusing. And then now this year we've had to create a separate project for each one. And so what we're looking at instead is having an identifier to be able to identify all the projects that are linked to that asset growth plan or the plan,
Yep.
but have them as separate projects in there, not just one line item. It'll be all separate. Yeah. Yeah. So the renewal ones are a little bit different. There's some different rules for them. So I think we're almost down to them, but certainly where they're really distinct sites and work, they need to be their own project number is what we're saying. Okay, so this one is not a hard and fast rule, but we're saying where practical, create a new project for investment that have successful funding application. So where not practical, we need to be creating work orders for expenditure and an associated work order for income clearly for that piece in amongst all the work orders so that we can actually expense and clearly know for that funding agreement what's the income and what's the expenditure. This one's where I guess curious of your feedback on this, because I know when we were talking about this, obviously in a perfect world that it'd have a new project, and obviously for capitalisation that would be better. But there was some examples that were given that that's not practical to do it, and that they at the moment they're actually using these work orders to capture it. Does that present a big issue?
What were the project? What were the examples?
Did we asphalt overlay? Was that one? The gravel resheet was split out as its own projects. I thought it was the asphalt overlay was one.
Historically, it usually had work order.
Yeah, it did actually.
I'm not sure what the current one is, but historically.
No, that's still the case. And I think what we said, as long as there's a work order for the road and then a work order for income and it's named the same, so we can clearly see one goes with the other.
Funding can go with the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, is there any passionate driving reason why we should enforce a business rule where when there's funding, you have a separate project created immediately? And if there's not, then we'll say where practical created. If not, then you need these two work
You
orders.
just need a work order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you've got is fine.
Okay.
Some of those might be a combination of one above it, the rail trail, but they involved in the actual funding application as well.
Yeah, and so it's where there's, the rail trail is probably one, is that we've got concept design, but then we're only going to go and build or do portion A, or do a gravel track, and then stage 2 is to seal it or whatever it might be. So some of these overlap.
It's really going to have to be a bit of a guide, and it's really a case by case basis of what's going to be appropriate, or what's most appropriate
Bridges, for example, they want to be passed on.
Yeah, so let's have a look at the renewal because they're classed as a renewal. So, they are all set up as individual projects at the moment anyway, like that. So, but yeah, they're types of ones that they really are their distinct own thing. So a new project for any urgent investment. So that's when we have Auckland Creek landslips or Gundoon Street failure or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Different project numbers for upgrade and renewal of assets that are managed as distinctly different sites and activities. So examples here are water reservoir renewals, the water main replacement. So like Sandpiper Ave water main. We've now split all of them out. Aerodrome Road. Particularly the water, or both of them got really messy in what the money was actually for.
So this is where, when you're talking about like Sandpiper and Aerodrome Road, weren't we going out to tender a contract for those projects to be under the one contract, but we're delivering them as separate projects because they're separate assets. They're not connected or reliant on each other.
Correct.
They're independent of each other.
Yeah. And in saying that, these water mains, like that Sandpiper Ave, when you actually look at the assets we're replacing, there are still multiple assets, but they're in a line.
Yes. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
We'll work through all of them and just see, because there are, hopefully the examples make sense. So the next one is different project numbers and no work order per asset for each year's program for reoccurring capital investments. So these are planned ones. So this is, we're saying no work orders per asset because typically these are the same. We're undertaking the same activity in the program, but there are different assets. And I think this one was more about those assets. The actual value of them individually is quite small, so it doesn't make sense to create a work order for each asset. So water meter replacement, whilst that contract is quite large when it goes out, if you broke it down to each one, it'd be, $200 here and there. Water and sewage asset replacement, so subcomponents being renewed. Leachate disposal system, asphalt overlay. Oh, we've got asphalt overlay in there as no work order per asset.
Say that, sorry, Chris.
Asphalt overlay. Anything to do with the road segment, or really realistically by the same work order. Because it could be which part of the road is like Gundoon Street, which part of the road is the work on. You need to just give up by.
I've got to do it all. I just wanted to do that one bit.
And the water and sewage assets, I think the Janet's program we talked about, like if it's the relining and that. Again, so you set that contract up. They're fixing out all those assets as part of the contract, then that might be okay. But if it's not, over several contractors doing it,
Yeah.
then you need to know which one, which.
So I guess it's a question of what, if we had a perfect world, what's best to set it up. Yeah. Because the next one is different project numbers and different work orders per asset. So this one's no work order per asset, and then the next one is work orders per asset. So I guess is the difference where those individual, like the work on the individual asset is like a larger dollar number that really should be separated out. So like the asphalt overlay.
the work that's actually being done on those. So with like the relining, for example, just it's got all the maybe the specific type. So if you've got one that's problem child or doesn't have them have that contract,
Mm.
now the other one be for a life cycle cost, now the other one be spreading that extra overhead that's been involved in 10 of those ADF across something like yours.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Where water meters, basically just dig up, chucking your money and make sure you don't get water service that they need to go and pick up and that'll come back in through the CFR
Mm.
operation thing.
So is it fair to then say, because I know these water and sewage asset replacements, they were more in relation to, oh no, the unplanned stuff is down here, I think.
They're still a pump station.
Oh no, I know.
Necessarily that you want to be at all with the last time either.
Yeah, because some of these were more a reactive bucket, like, you know, Clint has a pump that failed in a pump station. And he just like he's replacing components as opposed to doing a full replacement.
If they're more reactive than the planned route.
Yeah, which I'm confusing because I've got planned written here. I realise I'm.
The reactive ones for the pump region and doing everything enough information. I think actually put everything right.
Yeah.
They just go, I bought a new pump and away you go. So it depends how that goes back through the maintenance scheduling, whether that's traceable.
Yeah.
To marry back with replace these ones through a reactive
Yeah.
because it's failed in the middle of the night
Yeah.
and it comes back to this. Where how traceable that is. Might be that there's a special order that has here against this work order and there's a special order somehow connected in the management.
Yeah, and they're all elements that are maturing at the moment, and I don't have the answer to them. Yeah, so I guess it's trying to figure something that works for where we are now.
Don't want the guys have to really do too much in that space. So a lot of stuff you don't want to do something that's just mainly
That practice. Yeah. So would it be fair to say the trigger, I guess, whether you have a work order per asset or not, is one around the value of the asset, like the replacement value of it, like a water meter would be unreasonable to want work orders for each one.
Activity, water meter replacement and activity. So pump renewal is an activity. So they're charging it to that activity. So you can see all these things, 7 pump renewed.
Yeah.
In that work order.
Yeah.
Mate.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So where you've had where you've got a bucket for replacement, it's a work order per activity rather than per asset.
Mm, yeah.
So you've got to get one big bucket there, which is for fish.
Other.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah.
What's the other word?
Ideally, you wouldn't have too many of those. Even though
Yeah. Okay, let's have it. That makes sense. Because some of these, it won't make sense to have any, I guess, or you'll just have one expenditure. Yeah, that makes sense.
With the income, what for the sewer, new sewer connections, right?
They're down in a different one. They're on their own down here where we have income. These two here are where we have income associated. So I'll just keep going through here. So the next one is different project numbers and work, and then for the buckets, and then a work order per asset. So sorry, the one thing I probably should have, I don't know if you picked up in my amazing explanation, is that we're shifting to, in that so where we have reoccurring budget, we'll have new, so instead of just having one project that covers the 10 years, it'll be now 10 projects. So 21, 22 asphalt overlay, 22, 23 asphalt overlay, and there'll be 10. So that's a change we're going to implement. That's what I mean by for each year's program.
Yeah.
So this next one is different project number for each year plus different work orders per asset. So footpath and car park renewal. That makes sense. The next version is different project numbers per zone area with work orders per asset and also the different project per year's program. So in these, what did we have? Transverse road gully, gully pit renewals, rural drainage. So this is where we could potentially have 30 projects because we've got 3 zones and we're having 1 per year. We'll end up with 30 covering. This is typically where internal teams are delivering and for them to manage their budget and know what budget is for each of the southern, central and western.
No, wasn't that the one off the list? I thought that was spoken to. You know what she said? Isn't that what
What's that?
she said the other day when we were looking at this, that she'd spoken to you and said to you that this year was a one-off, that we would be best to go back to the people or was that?
So at the moment we've got written as gravel resheet is different project numbers for each year's program. Then each year prior to budget build, create a new project per asset. Is that different or same? That's what you want?
Yep, okay.
Who are you after?
Yeah, we need to here. 2 o'clock.
Oh, it's not in here. I got this book to 2:30.
Oh, sorry.
Which meeting, Dan?
I'll find out.
Okay.
Backing up on the city, that one, then you've got a field there that says which part of the business is up.
We do. So the location or the suburb field currently as it stands, you can either select the suburb the worker's in or you can select central, western or southern.
That would be the top off.
Yeah, but you still need a separate project because you can't select if you've got one project and 3 teams are doing components of it. Or you're meaning for the work order, at the work order level, select the team?
Yeah, I was about to say that. I don't know. I don't know what's easier for them when they're, from their perspective. Wouldn't it be similar to the gravel reshoot program though, wouldn't they do it by zone?
At the moment, the grants and stuff like that. All over there.
Yeah, but isn't the gravel reshoot program done by zone as well?
Some of those.
Do you mean when done as in out in the field,
As in the
they
crew.
have their crews for the
Yes.
areas? Correct, they do. And they typically don't cross over
Yeah.
and
I
do
know,
this.
so, yeah.
So Chris, are you saying, sorry, just,
Yep.
you,
Building up there, yeah, articles or something.
yeah, I don't know that I'm following the data field thing, but
So what were you asking for? What do you think it is?
one project per year.
Yeah, per year per zone. Is that what we're proposing? Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, it's one project per zone per year, and then you have work orders against that for the specific assets. But what Chris is saying is that instead of having 3 projects per year, just to replicate the individual teams, is there not a way, I guess, and the only other way I can see it working is at a work order level, you assign work orders to the different areas. So then you only have to have one project, but the
That was
work,
the same one project. But that's, you're going to end up the same problem with what we're running. Who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for say capital ready to the capital? Whereas at the moment we're still going. Yeah, but at the moment we've got Western plant and Phoenix there. So who's signing off on the project because Southern part Phoenix there, for instance. And then that's what I said back. He's going to filter and it's going to become a void problem to sign off on. And then all that is reliant on them filtering it up the board, and to me, I don't think they need that second level anyway. It was three that makes them responsible for it. And the team leader is responsible for it. I think that's right, it's just like that person.
Yeah, it seems to work in theory for me, but it makes sense to me.
yeah. I can see where Chris is coming from on the sense of just we're going from one project or 3 projects, sorry, because we currently have one project per zone and then the whole 10 years of data fits in. Whereas now we're going from 3 to 30, and that's a big jump by bringing in that element of having a new project per year's program. So I
get that as well.
but is it one of those where we trial it and see how it goes?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm wondering if we do it like this and then if that works out to be administratively a burden, then we need to figure out a better way to do it.
Because I'm hearing that one project for all areas is not going to work or has worse.
If they have the same number, that same project number carried over 4 years, it's the same. So for the
Back before 2014 or something, yeah. So I thought I would just fall under the one number. Each work order had signed off individually by that area. And the Gully Q replacement, the mill, for example, actually had the specific assets listed against that project. So that the operation coordinator or whatever time, and the person was at the time. So he knew which ones I was doing. Google. So you just go randomly picking
Yeah, so this still has work orders per asset. That component of it is still there. Hmm.
I think they're a bit low.
No, it's a valid comment, Chris. Very much valid.
Mm. Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with what Wendy was saying. You have to wait for the project or bringing underneath it signed off, and that's not suitable either for capitalisation.
Yeah, exactly.
I just know previously that all this funding was three separate assets.
Yep.
And it's one project, and
It seemed like from that perspective.
I've worked with.
Righto, let's try that and see how we go.
Mm.
So the next one is different project numbers for each year's program. So this is where it's a gravel resheet. So each year there'd be a different project for the program. Then just prior to us creating or building the budget, that project is then split out to be one project per asset. And that, I guess, top project just ends up with $0 against it, which is what happened this year, is my understanding. Is that what happened this year? So that didn't happen for asphalt overlay. Not this year, sorry.
This year, my understanding is it was just one big project and it's work orders underneath. And in the past, it's been a project per road.
So 2021 we're talking?
Yes.
Yeah. So for 21-22, what we've done is through that budget bill, when we knew the program for 21-22, back then went and created a project per road in the IPP. So what's being pulled into the budget for 21-22 is individual projects per road, the gravel resheet.
That's what we want. Yeah.
But that I don't believe is what's happened for asphalt overlay. The asphalt overlay project is one project for 21-22. Yeah, okay. And Beck explained that the difference is because these are typically delivered internal, whereas the asphalt is external delivery.
Is it?
Yes,
Learn something new.
yep, under contract.
Cool. Okay. So it's a bit of both.
There is a bit of both.
Correct. There's some prep work we do internally. Yeah.
Yeah, like lifting manholes and different stuff like that as well. Okay, so happy to move on from that one.
Mm-hmm.
So same project numbers and same work order number for new water and sewage connections. So this is where year on year the same project number will be left open and the work orders stay the same. So this is new water meters, new sewer connections. This is where they pay us to do something. It's effectively a net zero.
Just the developer stuff. This is usually the developer.
Or customers. No, this could be, I want a new water meter, connect my lot.
Right. Yeah.
A water meter application, a sewer.
This is where we get reimbursed for the cost before we put it.
They pay it, yeah.
Yes.
So they'll say, I want a new water meter, $1,000, so pay my money. We go out and put it in.
Yeah.
So does that come through the project?
Not capital.
No.
It's bundled in eventually as capital, so it's not.
So do you then go through pathway and find them, or how do they decide?
It comes through the workflow pathway.
Okay, happy with that?
Yep.
The next one is same project numbers and different work order numbers each year for other types of external requests. So this is, I haven't worded that very well. I'll change that. So it's where year on year, it's the same project number, so it just stays open. But every year we establish new work orders. So this is external request. So every time we have an external request, we create a new work order for it. So this is more the developer ones where we undertake work. So it's on an on quote basis.
Do we get many of those?
No. Oh,
Depends on the.
yeah, depends how busy we are. Yeah, true. Not like we used to do, but these are effectively private works. Yeah.
And then that same deal through public.
Yeah, depends on.
They are an application typically of some sort through Pathway. Set up capital project and journal costs from OPEX project to CAPEX projects for capital purchase needing to be transferred. This was the one that we questioned.
Yeah, this is a bit contentious for me.
Yeah, there's an action there around why the hell are we doing that double handling.
I think we need to resolve that before. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments around that one in particular? I wouldn't have thought that it impacts you guys a heck of a lot. It's more Beck that's impacted by it and Tanya Barnes.
What are the complexities for active payments?
Yeah, there's also things that go through the general ledger that Beck picks up as part of her review off the back of what you've just said, Chris, maintenance works. Yeah. And
Usually reactive.
Yeah.
That's just something.
That's right.
Okay.
Move on. Yep.
Close capital projects that stop partway through select, define or execute phases and expense to a maintenance number. So this is just where we get to a gate decision and we say, no, this is no longer viable. We're just canning the whole project. And why we specifically pulled out those phases is because that's typically where you've got CAPEX money. Prior to that is OPEX. So again, straightforward.
This is just an administrative type area that Beck and Sarge would handle normally.
Project starts capital, but actual work is deemed OPEX. So CAPEX project closed down and new OPEX number started, or what we establish is typically there's an OPEX number or a maintenance number that it can just be transferred. You don't need a new number started. And that's the same thing, Beck and Sarge generally deal with that.
Yep.
Make capital project inactive when it is placed on hold, but still planned to be undertaken. So these are things where we do design, but then we park it and say we're not going to construct until we get funding. So in IPP itself, it'll just show on hold. In Tech One on the finance side, it'll just be changed from active to inactive, and then once we get funding, we can then make it active again.
Again, this is a bit of an administrative one. I think not sure if it affects Tanya Barnes and Beck and Sarge.
Yeah. So they're the types of business rules we've collated. Keen to hear if there's anything else. Any other scenarios or situations that we haven't captured? And also happy to send you the link of this if you want to dwell over it a little bit more than in this session as well. No, happy to move on.
Yeah. I think
Does anyone want the link to this to look at it further? As in to provide comment, obviously you'll get this, the final version, but before we finalise it.
I'm good.
You're good? Gail?
Russell,
Chris? Possibly. I already said it, sorry.
You have some.
Oh my God. I was,
I know that now.
I'm all over this. I'm organised and I don't even know it. Okay.
sounds like me.
Righto. So the last thing that I had was just a really what's next. So the Tech One consultant is here. His name's Ryan. He's building that direct entry setup and the workflows associated. So he's got 2 weeks of work he's estimated from today. And then we'll obviously got to test it and do make sure all our procedures are updated. So whilst it might be ready by sort of early July, we're not anticipating to roll over to it until possibly end of August to do proper implementation of it, not just here, figure it out. That's being led. I'm handing over to Brooke. So from a lead perspective, she's leading that, and Sarah Skinner is obviously facilitating that, being a software change. Update of IPP with 21-22 budget. So Beck's doing that throughout July. Updating the IPP with gate decisions or project change requests. So this is now, because we're going to go live basically from next week with IPP, there may be gate decisions or project requests that need to be updated into IPP. What we're saying is we're going to have to just park them in July basically, and from August onwards we're going to have to play catch up with them just from capacity in terms of with everything else you guys have got going on. Training for asset governance on how to update IPP. So this is to enable this August date, and that Beck will deliver that. And that's really just based on those procedures and running you through. That'll be the specific go here, touch this, do that, all in IPP. There's an IPP data cleanse project going on, or will be going on from July to December. It's part of the transformation project for 21-22, and I've scoped that up just yesterday. No, this morning. Yeah, I scoped it, sent it out this morning. Sorry, what day are we in? Monday. So that's
A long week.
Feels like a long week for me already.
Yeah, so that data cleanse is really focusing on getting some confidence back in that data and to enable you guys then to carry on with that QA and maintain it. And it's also trying to get us away from this yearly process we've got of shit, we got 2 weeks, we've got to update bids. Trying to get away from that, turn it into a more BAU. And the last one is ongoing IPP data review, and that's converting it over into a BAU type process where the further years out we're reviewing beforehand, and we're happening over 12 months. So we're happening from January to December every year, as opposed to 3 weeks prior to December when we start trying to build our capital list. So that's kind of what's next. I don't profess at all that what we've delivered for IDF has fixed all our problems, but hopefully it's making it a little bit easier, and we're slowly chipping away at it to get more refined and improved. Any questions? That's all I've got for today.
Questions for the example, probably one. As a government for updating the IPP, already gone into the project national media, updating of that.
I like what you're thinking.
This is another part of it.
We definitely need to think about that and touch it up for sure.
So when you update IPP, you're mapping it at the same time. Is that what I heard? Like,
Well,
or
Again, I'm not sure, but it's a
Yeah.
question.
to be fleshed out. It's something that Brodie's talked about that would assist with gaining efficiencies when we're scheduling and working out efficiencies of delivering similar projects in the same location. So for example, water mains and footpaths, if you're doing one year, do the path 1 year, and then you're going to rip it all up 2 years later because you want to do the water main, it makes sense to be doing it at the same time. So there's those efficiencies that can be gained, and I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind just noting on that slide to maybe just to discuss with Brodie the GIS update. Just so we've captured it somewhere. Perfect.
Excellent. Now, slide out. All right, that's all that I had, unless you had any other questions for now. No? Thank you very much for coming.